Hey there, it's Christy. I am here to walk you through an overview of the moon cycles, and it's a presentation I've put together called Dancing with the Moon 101. And so if you're not familiar with the 8 lunar cycles and the way that we're working with them, this is the video that you want to watch. This will give you an overview, and then the other phases that we go through will make a little more sense to you. So this is kind of giving you a broader context. And the focus of this really is how to use this as a personal practice that can enrich your life in many ways. The one that really speaks to me is connection. And so the wisdom of connection is this principle that I stumbled across. And it was in the book called The Reconnection by Dr. Eric Pearl. It was actually in the foreword. And when I read this, I had tingles. I was floored because it was describing what I had created in many different situations, what I kind of had been drawn to, this organic process that guided my work in IBM when I worked in the corporate world, and it guided my work when I started working individually with clients. And this wisdom of connection shows up in so many places. I'm a really passionate about being trauma-informed and creating a trauma-informed community. And this really just, I think everything boils down to connection. And this really, it shows up in trauma, it shows up in addiction, it shows up in so many places. So this process, what I'm sharing with you here, can be applied to anything that you feel disconnected from, or wherever you're feeling a sense of disease or disorder or chaos. This is a principle that you can use to connect back in and to kick off a process that will naturally result in order and naturally result in ease. So it begins, actually I want to show you here at the bottom first, this lack of attention. So this is how we get out of connection. So we take our eyes off, we disconnect from our body, we disconnect from our environment, from the people we care about, from this shows up in so many different places. So that lack of attention creates a state of disconnection. And that state of disconnection then leads to a state of dysregulation. It's as if you were dancing, you'd be off beat and not in harmony. And then that dysregulation leads to a sense of disorder. And I would say maybe chaos, right? And then that state of chaos leads to a breakdown, and it leads to dis-ease. And so that means lack of ease, but it also can mean dis-ease, the disease that may show up in your body. And so this is what happens when we have a lack of attention. So how do we correct that? Or how do we get back into alignment with connection? So the thing we do is we bring our attention. And so we bring our attention back. We attend to our inner voice. We attend to our body signals. We attend to the person who is somebody we care about. We attend to nature. And we attend to the desires that are rising up in us. And so our attention, this gift of the attention, leads to a state of connection. And that state of connection fosters a state of self-regulation. And that state of self-regulation fosters a sense of order and alignment. And then that order and alignment results in a state of ease. And so if you just focus on this part, attention, attending to, feeling with, being with, then you are kicking off a natural process that will lead to connection, that will lead to self-regulation, to order, and to ease. But it starts with your ability to focus your attention. And that's what we're doing here. We're combining, right now, I'm making this presentation slightly broad. So I'm sharing that this is a way to create a sense of attention and connection with our cosmic environment, and specifically with the lunar cycle and with nature. So why would we want to connect with natural cycles? Well, I had just a personal story. This was back in, 2000 and I think 2003, 2002, something like that. Picture this, being a single mom of 3 kids, one of them a baby. My divorce was final a month before he was born. And my ex-husband, the father of my 3 kids, kind of went MIA. And so I was left with, these 3 kids, full-time job to pay all of our debt. Debtors would come to me to collect, and it was very overwhelming. And so I got to this point where my son was almost 3, living in suburbs, looking around me. I'd stripped everything out of my environment to try to just focus on the essentials. All the beauty, everything had just been stripped. So it was just functional. And my heart was breaking. It was like, I cannot imagine doing 15, 16, 17 more years of this. This isn't a life. I've got to do something different. And so I had been working 60 hours a week. I had been telecommuting to my corporate job, just a computer screen all the time. And I ended up, through a long story, to net it out for you, I sold everything that we had except for mementos and antiques, put those in storage, moved us into a tent. And that's when I got back in touch with my natural cycle. That is when I got back. We slept when the sun went down. We rose when the sun came up. We slept under the stars. We connected with nature in a way that was so moving and so healing. And that just, it's so hard to describe and find words for. It brought me back to myself, which is exactly what I needed at the time, despite the fact that I was still telecommuting from this tent to my corporate job, which only a couple of people in that company knew about at the time. But I was able to really tune back in. And so I understand the gift of being able to tune into natural cycles. And I felt that call a couple of years ago when I felt the urge to get back in touch with lunar cycles, which is something I never really had tracked before, but the moon kept calling me. And so I started new moon circles, thinking about the red tent and when women would gather, and I wanted to find my women and find connection, that sense of sisterhood, and to foster that in this area. And I really had no idea what I was doing, but I called together a meetup and just put it out there. And I've met these amazing women through this process. I'm so grateful. I feel so blessed. And this has really kicked off another evolution of my connection with natural cycles, my connection with women, my connection to my work, my connection to the people I love, and to the land. So nature deficit disorder is something that's real. And when we disconnect from nature, we make decisions that aren't in anyone's best interest. And so I just want to say that this can be a really profound experience. And I honor you for being curious about it. So slowing down. Slowing down, this is part of it. It's slowing down to really tune in, not to speed up through things, which I kind of have sounded like in this presentation, but really to slow down and tune in. And it requires our attention to be able to do that. The purpose here is to reconnect with the rhythms and the cycles of nature, the ebbs and flows, and to help us find our place in this cosmic order of things. So these seasonal cycles that we're all familiar with, winter, spring, summer, and fall, show up again in the lunar cycles. We have a new moon phase where the moon for us is dark. It's the closest to the sun, so there is no sunlight being reflected off of it, and it mimics a winter phase, a phase of darkness, a phase of going within. We have the waxing phase, where it's spring-like, where things are building, potential is building. We have the full moon, where everything is fully illuminated, and think of that as you would think of as summer, and around summer solstice, everything is ripening and blooming, and there's just this abundance of growth and greenery. And then we have the waning phase, which is similar to fall, when things are kind of closing down, going a little more in, we're harvesting, we're thinking about putting things away and kind of preparing ourselves for this next part of the phase. And then these 4 phases are also mimicked in menstrual cycles. So we have this menstrual phase that's similar to winter, this dark phase where we go within. We have the spring-like phase where things are the potential for new life is blooming, and so if you're bleeding, you've got this potential for new life that's building in you. And you've got this summer-like phase where you're ovulating and you're visible to everyone around you, and you're very attractive and persuasive and charismatic. These are all like hormonal things that are going on inside our bodies. And then you've got that waning phase where things are starting to close back down. There is not a new, if you're not pregnant, then new life is not happening. And so your body takes those steps to kind of close down production and begin to start down that path of clearing things out and preparing again for the next phase. So what we're doing here is we are looking at these phases, and we are dancing with the phases. So beyond the 4 phases, we've actually got them broken up into 8 specific phases. And each phase we look at as either a yang phase or a yin phase. And you can think of the yang phase as this white part where it's when you look at the symbol, you've got white, but you also have a little bit of black in that white. And then you've got the black, and you've got a little bit of white in that. And so you've got the yang with a little bit of yin, and you've got the yin with a little bit of yang. So it's kind of like leading and following in a dance. Yang is like leading, and yin is like surrendering and following. And Grandmother Moon is like this timekeeper. She sets the pace, she sets the rhythm, and she reminds us to shift back and forth from doing to being, from initiating to restoring, from giving to receiving. And in our practice, we go through these phases in the lunar cycle, and so we learn to dance with life. We learn to remind ourselves that in the activity, we need a little bit of relaxation. In the relaxation, we need a little bit of activity. And the polarities that we dance between really lends itself to creating a more resilient life experience. These habits within us that really can help us respond well to life and what presents to us through life. When we're establishing the same balance of giving and receiving, it really enriches our life. We become able to access a much broader range. It's not just black or white. We understand there are nuances, and we're able to play with those nuances in a way that's really adept and skillful. Of course, like anything, it will be a little clumsy at first, but the more and more you work with these practices, the more you'll find and discover more about yourself, the more you'll discover about the resources you have on the inside and the ability to influence and magnetize and connect with resources on the outside. The yin and yang steps, or yang and yin steps here, they remind us to, in the yang, to get motivated, to initiate, take smart action, instill a structure. What do we need to have for more balance? So it's about initiating, doing, speaking, giving. And then the yin phases remind us to tune into ourselves, to slow down. What are we feeling? Where do we need to restore balance? It's a state of restoring, of being, of listening, receiving. So actually, I'll go ahead and jump into this. So this is the first phase, the new moon phase. It's a yang phase. We have the action of setting an intention. And so the dark dawning, the absence of light, the vision is felt in that scene. So in the absence of light here, we're thinking of this as being a new seed being planted in the rich soil of the earth, and it's germinating underground. So in the practice that we're using, we set an intention. We plant a seed of intention at the new moon. So this is something that our heart has been calling for, our desire is rising up in us. And we usually have a theme to frame this around for the month, given the astrological sign that the new moon shows up in that particular month. And so that theme kind of guides our focus so that we can set an intention that's in alignment with that theme. Often at this phase, you know that there's a seed in the ground, but you can't actually see what the seed's going to turn into. So you sense the presence of this vision or this intention that's rising up in you, that's wanting to grow, but you may not be able to actually see it clearly. And so we do our best to tune in at this time and to recognize what we sense. The second phase is the crescent phase, and this is a yin phase. And so we've got light quickening. We've got the light starting to stir. We're starting to see glimpses of the vision. We kind of can make out a little bit of the form. And in this case, the symbolic seed breaks out of its casing and it's pushing to the first new shoots above the ground. And at this phase, it's yin, and so we're reminded to relax into our intention and just to breathe and trust that it's growing. That something, these forces outside of us are collaborating and conspiring with us to create something new. The yin, because it's a yin phase, it's that reminder to relax and restore and rest. It doesn't mean that you're always through the several days that it's in yin phase. It doesn't mean you're just going to lay around unless that's what you're called to do. But it means that it's reminding us that when faced with a choice to like go into overdrive and push through or take a nap, you go with the nap, you go with the yin, the opportunities to really relax and restore at this time. And it helps us keep that balance. Now, the third quarter is yang. So again, we dance back into this more structured and action phase. The dark and light are in balance here. With the light, it's gaining in momentum, the structure, we're starting to see more structural outline of what is to be and what's forming. The seed is establishing its root and stem structure, so it's all about structure. It's very yang. And we're invited at this phase to take discerning action to support the intention that you have. And so when given the option to take a nap or take some action, we'll yield to the action. We'll take the action. We'll put things in systems and structures and focus, whatever that is that's calling for, into our intention at this time. Then phase 4 is Gibbous This is waxing gibbous. And so the moon is waxing and building. Waxing means building. And so the gibbous is a yin phase. And the light becomes more dominant. The quest for knowing what this seed, this intention is going to look like is there. That the symbolic seed forms a bud. And at this phase, yin, we're reminded again to rest and to trust that the perfect intention is coming into form at the perfect time. And we have these unseen forces that are conspiring with us to see that happen. Phase 5 is the full moon, and it's a yang phase. And this is full moon. You have full illumination at this phase. The light is at its fullest. The moon is furthest away from the sun, fully reflecting back the light of the sun to us on the earth as we're looking up. And this flowering is blooming at this time. So there are a couple of things that can happen at this time, that the seed can either flower and burst into a form, or the seed breaks down. So if the timing isn't right, if the vision is incomplete, if the circumstances and the structures just aren't able to support the life of this intention at this time, then it starts to break down and starts to kind of go into its back into itself. And so the promise of this phase, the thing that we're being asked to do here, is to move ahead with your attention in intention, take action, move ahead with it as you see it now, or accept that your intention wasn't the best at this time, and to release it and course correct. So take the action to course correct. Phase 6 is disseminating, and it's yin. So this is the first, we go into the waning phases of the moon. So the light is waning. And this is for distributing the energy that's been accumulated in this intention, for disseminating meaning, getting the meaning out. There's an urgency to live out the possibility and the potential to share and disseminate the value of the meaning of this intention. So in this case, the symbolic seed produces fruit to be shared. At this point, it's a yin, so we're again reminded to yield and relax more so than to opt to yin when there's an opportunity. And in this phase, we're being asked to feel grateful for your intention coming into form in the perfect way and receive it with gratitude. And so it's a very receptive phase. The 7th phase is third quarter. It's yang. And so the light and dark are again in balance. The dark is building. And the life impulse has kind of completed its mission. It's already come to fruit, produced the fruit. And so now it's got this impulse to complete its mission. So it begins to reorient. It's uncertain of its future. There could be rebellious acts against old patterns and a breakdown of useless forms here. And so there could be like an inner revolt, a crisis in consciousness. It's a challenging phase in the lunar phases. And so the dark is becoming more dominant and the light is diminishing. And so you can think of this phase as kind of like a seed withering on the vine and decomposing. So it's starting that process of breaking itself down, life force going away, composting, the old. And at this time, we're asked to receive the intention. Now that I'm receiving the intention, I give back from a place of abundance. And so this is a place of being able to share. This is a place of being able to give your gifts, of being in service in gratitude and appreciation for the blessing that this intention has brought into your life. And then this last phase is phase 8. This is the balsamic phase. It's yin. And this phase is when life impulse, concentrates itself and all of its wisdom of this cycle into the seed of ideas for future visions. And so that during the dark of the moon, it transforms past what it was into a mutation that is possible to be used again in the future. So we seed new concepts with old structures, truly composting. The symbolic seed here turns back into itself. The plant goes to seed. And what we're being asked here at a yin phase, another reminder to trust and reflect with thanks, with gratitude, with appreciation. And rather than giving, as we were asked in the third quarter, we're being guided to rest and restore at this phase. Resting and restoring before the new moon arrives and before it's time to set a new intention. So how do we do this? How do we set these new moon themes and make it a personal practice? We use the theme to guide our reflections, to listen in and set intentions. So I'm going to take you through what is active right now, currently as of this recording. So I'm recording this on July 16th, I believe, and this is 2018. And the new moon was in Cancer, and so the new moon just completed that phase. We're actually going into our second phase, the crescent phase, but this is what the new moon was. It was in Cancer. And this is a quote from Chani Nicholas. She's one of my favorite astrologers. She's a feminist astrologer, so really has amazing poetry-filled horoscopes that just hit the spot every time. So here's what she has to say about Cancer. With a little more than the usual new moon in Cancer emotional rawness, this solar eclipse ushers into it a time of rapid growth and accelerated healing through emotional experiences. Cancer is the amniotic fluid from which all life begins and comes forth. This eclipse's emotional undertow may momentarily take us under, but it also brings us back to the wisdom held in the power of our origin stories. How were we parented, how we were loved and cherished, how might we need to learn how to do those things for ourselves? How are we being asked to transform a wound within our family line so that its damage gets disrupted? So big, reflections here about the energy of the new moon. So this is Chani and other astrologers help us kind of get a feel for the emotional energy, kind of like the emotional weather. I look at it as emotional weather. And then the Global Sisterhood offers a theme. And the Global Sisterhood is a collective of women who host new moon circles in about 80 different countries. Every new moon, they get together, and we're focusing and meditating with a heart meditation with intention on a specific theme, all of us in the same 3-day window. And so we're hoping to inspire this Maharishi effect, where our intentions collectively can influence ripple effects out into our outer world. So for this time, the Global Sisterhood theme was liberation through forgiveness. I forgive, I let go, and I set myself free. It's Cancer is a water sign, and it rules deep emotions, empathy, sensitivity, and intuition. So we take those two pieces as information before we set our intention. In the case of a new moon circle, I invite you to join one that we host. We host them locally in Northwest Arkansas, and we're starting to do them virtually, and so via online video conferencing where we can see each other and actually share space together. And that is an experience I highly recommend, and it will help you get tuned into the energy, the connection with the other women in the circles, and also this intention setting process. And if you are not able to do that, when you do a little, research here, checking in with astrologers, checking in with the new moon theme, you can do a little bit of journaling on the topic. I'm noticing here that I didn't change this part of the slide. This is actually for the last speaking your truth. That's for the previous slide, but you can have different questions that you can prompt yourself with to get in touch with that theme, get your thinking going, get your sensing going, and then sit down to write intentions. And so with the absence of light, we can't use our eyes to navigate. We've got to sense our way. So we get, we go inward, we immerse ourselves in our senses, and we tune into that feeling state. We listen in with our bodies to hear the initiation of the desire that's rising up in us, something new, something different coming in this next lunar cycle. So the way that I recommend creating a personal practice is to mark down the new moon dates on your calendar or your date planner. I love the physical kinesthetic experience of doing that. It helps me track. I go out and I'll look at the moon and I'll draw a picture of the moon. Or I'll draw a picture if I know where we are in the cycle and I can't see the moon yet. I'll go ahead and draw a picture of it to kind of orient myself in the day and time and space. And I set aside time, a regular date and time for my personal practice. And this is linked with my the new moon gatherings that I host with Gail Walker. And so we have varying different places where we meet up in our region, and we schedule those in advance, and we make a commitment. Whoever can come to be in person comes, and that helps anchor that practice in. And then leading up to the new moon, I make notes about what's coming up to leave. I kind of make notes about what desire I'm sensing, what I'm sensing to come up. I check out astrologers, Mystic Mama, Chani Nicholas, Jennifer Rassiopi, and I see what the cosmic weather's like. And then I gather items to create a sacred space that reflects this theme for me, and it symbolizes kind of where I'm going or where I'm sensing I'm going. And then on that new moon, we have an opportunity to connect in with our body for inspiration and guidance, get into that feeling state, and see what we sense that's rising up in us. Journal about those questions, whatever we're noticing. And again, that shortcut would be to look at the Global Sisterhood and see if there's a circle near you, or join one that is online. And they'll provide some of that resource for you to kind of get into a personal practice. And then during the lunar cycle, you look for the moon in the sky as each day goes by, drawing the moon and its shape in your date book, tuning into the different phases and honor the timing, what Grandmother Moon is reminding us, yin and yang phases, and checking to see where the lunar cycle is, and journaling about what your intention is, what you're noticing. At the end of the cycle, you just repeat the process. And so I am passionate about tapping into women's mysteries. And I was fascinated by that tradition that I kept reading about of women gathering during their new moon, during their moon time, or the new moon phases in a moon lodge or a red tent, and honoring the rhythmicity, the cycles, being able to have these external cues and guides to remind us of rest and effort, and balancing those two. And then the sense of learning and growing together, and being able to reestablish those connections with ourselves, with each other, with nature, and this web of support and shared experience that we all have. We're sharing this earth. There's one planet here that we're all sharing. So being able to connect in this way contributes to my vision of creating a world that's compassionate, more loving, more compassionate, a world that works for everybody, and a world that embraces feminine values and leadership qualities and has a healthy balance of masculine and feminine. So these are some recommended resources I share with you. Jennifer Rasiopi, she's got a really clear, crisp way of presenting. I really love that. Channing Nicholas, I spoke about her earlier. She also has amazing new moon workshops, and she was a sponsor of our meetup, our new moon gathering this in 2018. Ezzy Spencer, amazing. She has this really cool book called Lunar Abundance, and she has some really cool downloads. So you can download a lunar calendar or some graphics and printable resources from her. Mystic Mama collects all these different astrologers and pulls them together for astral insights. And then she creates these amazing, gorgeous collages that I love. Global Sisterhood, of course, I've mentioned them. They have sister circles and new moon heart meditations and resources and a community to plug into. And then a lot of the information I shared with you was from Mysteries of the Dark Moon by Demetri George. And it's a very deep read and an older book, but so full of knowledge and wisdom. And so I highly encourage you to check that out if you really want to go deep with this. So thank you so much for staying here to the end. And I want to just share with you how meaningful this practice has been for me. I had this sense that I wasn't able to really fully connect with people when I was younger. For whatever reason, I felt disconnected. And that's been really challenging this last year. I have been reconnecting with different things, reconnecting with my body, coming home to my body, reconnecting with the land, trying to find my place and honor to be able to inhabit it. And I have faced questions about belonging and about being able to actually belong somewhere. And I can tell you that this practice, as I get deeper and deeper into it, has created this strong, almost like this cosmic womb for me to exist in, a really safe structure, and a sense of order. The moon is predictable. She's unpredictable and moves around a little, she's got that movement part of her, but you can always depend on her to be there and to be going through these different cycles. And that sense of forming that strong container from which to orient ourselves from, being able to be led between all of these cycles, every lunar cycle being led between all these different phases, it really prepares us for all those times in life. Sometimes we're in a winter phase and we're composting and we're letting go and we're shedding and we're reorging, and things are being changed inside us. We're going through a process of metamorphosis, breakdown, and build up. And it's helped me to be participating in this practice. It's giving me courage to face those dark times with the awareness that it's part of a cycle, and with the awareness that, yes, this is where I am, and we will be coming to a crescent phase. We will move into a waxing phase. And just as with life, as with the moon, we're constantly evolving, constantly moving, and this too shall pass. And so it's been such a resource and such a gift to me, and I'm so honored to share it with you. I hope that it produces a really strong positive benefit for you in your life if you choose to really engage here. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have, share any resources that I have, and happy to hear your thoughts and your experiences on this. And so I will close for now, but I look forward to catching you next time.